What is going on, everyone? Episode 8. I don't know how long I'm going to actually introduce this by what number episode it is. Whenever we get up into the 50s or whatever, I may stop. But welcome to episode 8. We do a conference for pastors and church leaders and their teams every year. Well, when I say every year, I mean this will be our third year coming up in January. It's an annual event that we've put on and really an incredible time. I just absolutely love getting together with pastors and church leaders and their teams from all over the world. And I am so deeply committed to the local church, and I just love anybody who's in the trenches, building community and trying to reach cities and getting people healed up and healthy and whole and finding their destiny. I love all of it. I love the local church. I love getting around pastors. And whenever pastors and church leaders come to the pastors conference in January, one of the things I say is my goal during that time is that they would leave more connected, more equipped, and more encouraged. In other words, I want them to come in and I want them to feel more connected to other people that are like-minded, like-hearted, going after the same thing. Those that are in the trenches of building the church, those that are believing God for revival in their city. There's something that comes when we feel more connected to people. I also want them to be more equipped. I want them to leave really having more tools and more skills and more prepared for doing the mandate that God has given them in their city, in their state, in their nation. But I also want them to leave more encouraged. Now, this isn't just an advertisement for the Pastors Podcast. The reason why I share that is because that part of I want people to be encouraged. I want people to actually leave with more courage than they came in with. I will probably, over the next few years, talk a lot about this issue of encouragement. And the reason is there's kind of a couple reasons. One of them is I've just found this, that I find most people don't even need more teaching. They just need more courage to do what God's called them to do. In other words, following Jesus takes a massive amount of courage. Following Jesus puts you in places where what he calls you to and what you're facing is going to require courage. So I find the thing that's actually stopping people is not necessarily lack of equipping, but simply lack of courage. Whether it's to have a healthy marriage, whether it's to start that new business, whether it's to be a person of purity, whether it's to pursue the call of God on your life, whatever else it is, it takes courage. The reason why I mentioned the conference, the reason why I would say one of the core values that I have is that people would leave encouraged, is the Pastors Conference isn't actually the first Pastors Conference we've done. When I say it's the third year of our Pastors Conference coming up, it is for the current iteration of it. But we actually used to have, back in the early Jesus Culture days, a conference for youth pastors. It was called Outpouring. We did it for years. So much fun. Youth pastors and their teams would come in from all over. We'd spend a few days together in Redding. But one of the reasons why I put that conference on originally was I was just sitting one day and I felt like the Lord said, Banning, I want you to put on a conference for youth pastors. Well, I mean, I must have been, I don't know how old I was then, 25 maybe. And I was just starting out in youth ministry. I only had a few years under my belt. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to grow a youth group. I was trying to figure it all out myself. And then I feel the Lord just speak to my heart and say, Banning, I want you to start a conference for youth pastors. And I just said, God, I have nothing to say. I don't have anything to say to youth pastors. How can I put on a youth pastor conference when I don't even know how to I don't even know how to grow my own group. I don't even know how to establish a culture for young people in my own setting. How am I going to do that for anybody else? And the Lord spoke something to me that has really become kind of one of the main facets of what I feel called to. One of the main mandates of my life came from this moment, where the Lord just said, Banning, I don't need you to equip them. I just want you to encourage them. He said, you can bring other people in to equip them. He said, I want you to encourage them. I want you to be their biggest fan. I want you to let them know that they've got somebody in their corner. And I remember just thinking like, well, I may not know how to run a youth group, but I can encourage people. I can encourage them. So we started a youth conference called Outpouring years ago. And then right now, to this day, we still have a heart for pastors and leaders and anybody in the trenches. And one of my main goals is the issue of encouragement. Now, it may just be because I'm a words of affirmation guy. I don't know if you know the 5 love languages, but one of my top 2 is words of affirmation. So maybe it's just that I naturally lean towards wanting to actually speak courage into people's life. But it goes beyond that for me. This isn't just like, well, Banning, that's your personality. Your personality is you love to encourage people, and your personality is you love to speak words over them and things like that. This goes beyond my personality, and I have a deep conviction that the pattern we see throughout Scripture is the ministry of encouragement. What I mean by that is whenever God calls, no, not whenever, many times when God calls somebody to something in Scripture, he connects next to them somebody who becomes an encouragement for them. When Joshua was tasked to take the people into the promised land, I mean, think about this. After 450 years of slavery in Egypt, they're about to go into the promised land. They're going to have to take on some enemies. They're going to have to take some cities. They're going to have to establish a new way of life there. And God comes to Moses and says, Moses, I want you to strengthen, command, and encourage Joshua. God actually instructs Moses that he needs to come alongside Joshua and put courage inside of him, to encourage him. Because what he was about to do was going to take a lot of courage, so God connected with him, an encourager. We see that whether it's the story of Mordecai with Esther. Esther wasn't by herself. Esther had somebody who is an encourager alongside her. Maybe it's Jonathan and his armor bearer. Maybe it's what Jonathan was to David, and what the armor bearer was to Jonathan, what Moses was to Esther, what Mordecai was to Esther, what Moses was to Joshua, what Barnabas was to Paul, and what Paul was to Timothy. Is that God connects us to the ministry of encouragement that is flowing through the lives of people. I think this issue of encouragement is so massive. In fact, in 1 Corinthians 14, when it's talking about the prophetic gift, it actually says that the prophetic, one of the main reasons for the prophetic is for encouragement. In other words, the prophetic, which is God speaking through us, the prophetic is God speaking his words through us to somebody. We become the conduit for what God wants to say to somebody. And God says, my word is actually intended to bring courage, to encourage you. God himself is trying to encourage people, and he uses our lives to accomplish that through the prophetic. Paul said this when he writes to the Romans. He says, I long to be with you that our mutual faith might encourage one another. Paul's saying, I can't wait to get with you. To the church in Rome, he said, I can't wait to get with you because I know when I get with you, your life is going to bring great courage to me, and my life is going to bring great courage to you. Why is the issue of encouragement so big? Well, at the end of the day, we all need it. We all need encouragement. One of the main tactics of the devil is to discourage you. He knows this. He knows that it takes so much courage to follow Jesus. It takes courage to do what God's called you to do, and it takes courage to be who God's called you to be. So the enemy comes to disarm you of that courage. He wants to actually take courage from you, and he does that through discouragement. Discouragement. And so God comes along and says, I've got a different word for you. I'm going to put courage inside of you. I'm going to encourage you. And you know how he does that? One of the main ways he does that is through people. His word coming through people. It's that people come into our life and they bring the courage that we've needed. because as I pursue health in my marriage, it takes courage. As I pursue the call of God in my life, it takes courage. As I'm believing for finances in some area, it takes courage. So here's the challenge I want to give you on episode 8 of the Banning Liebscher podcast. This week, where I want to challenge you is this. I want to challenge you to be the biggest encourager in the room. That every room you walk into, in every relationship you walk into, that you would have the goal of being the biggest encourager there. That you would actually begin to understand that part of the mandate on your life, I am here to recruit an army of the ministry of encouragement. I mean this, I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to get as many people as possible to commit to and to embrace the ministry of encouragement. That everywhere I go, when I come into my family, when I come into my work, when I run into somebody, in fact, this is what I want my life to be. I want if you run into me in the hallway, I want if you sit in my office, I want if you hear a sermon, a podcast, I want if you read a book, I want if you come into any environment that I'm leading, my heart would be that you would leave with more courage than you came with. And I want to get an army of people that would actually say, you know what? I'm going to commit to that. I'm going to commit to being the biggest encourager in the room. And you know what's practical about this is if you commit to that, you will stand out in every environment you go to. In every environment you step into, if you commit to being the biggest encourager, you will stand out. And here's why. Because encouragement is lacking in today's society. So many people are discouraged. So many people are just struggling. There's not a lot, because encouragement really is a selfless act. I'm not focusing on myself. I'm going to focus on you. I'm going to call out the gold in you. I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to speak life into you. And there's so many people that just are not doing that. I'll give you 2 stories on something that happened to me where I realized how big, how a simple act of encouragement can make such a huge impact in just the simplest of ways. One of the things that I tried to do in my life over the years is that if I run into somebody doing a good job somewhere, I try to write their manager a letter. It's not a long letter, but if I run into somebody somewhere doing something, I try to send an email, or back in the day, I would actually send a letter to the manager, and I would just say, hey, I just want to let you know they did such a great job. I'm just so convinced that people are getting nothing but critical coming at them. Everybody tells you when they have a problem with you, but they don't tell you when, hey, you're doing a great job. And so I just kind of tried to have it as a habit that every once in a while I would do this. So I remember I was at Verizon. This was way back in the day when I had a flip phone. I think it was probably a Razor, Motorola Razor. And I was there in Verizon at the store, and I was standing in line at the customer service. And, customer service, listen, if you work retail and you work customer service, just kind of say, God bless you for the people that blame you for every one of the problems, that somehow they think you're the owner of the company and can solve it. They're so irritated with you. So it was kind of that day, and I people before me, I get up there, and the lady was super helpful, super nice. So I left, got her name, and went home, wrote a quick letter. Guys, it took me 5 minutes. Write a quick letter. Hey, just want to let you know, this lady did such a great job. She represents your company beautifully. I just want to make sure you know she's doing a great job. Send a letter. About, a month later, a guy comes up to me and says, hey, did you write a letter to Verizon about somebody in customer service? I said, yeah, maybe a month ago. How do you know that? He said, I work at Verizon. He goes, I work at that store, and they took that letter and they hung it up on the bulletin board. I thought, that is so fascinating. Like they just must not get a lot of those letters. And it stood out so much that they just put it on the bulletin board. Then, I don't know how long after that or whatever, we had out in Redding, California, out in front of our house, there was kind of like a water leak that was happening, and it was causing kind of the sidewalk in front of our house to kind of be slippery and dangerous. So I called the city of Redding and just said, hey, there's something going on here. So some guys come out and they work for a couple days on this thing. And I would talk to them a couple times when I was out there, really nice guys. And so I decided to write a note to their manager, to their supervisor. So I write a little note and just say, hey guys, just want to let you know, man, I love raising my kids in Redding. And one of the reasons I love raising my kids in Redding is because of people like these two men. What incredible employees. They represent our city so well. They did a great job. I just wanted to let you know as a supervisor, these guys are doing a great job. It was guys, again, 5 minutes. Write a letter, mail it off. A guy comes up to me again, I don't know how long, a month later, guy comes up to me and goes, hey, you wrote a letter for 2 guys in the city of Redding. I said, yeah, how'd you know that? He goes, I work for the city of Redding. I'm an employee, and we have an employee newsletter. So there's a newsletter that goes out to all the employees in Redding, and they said they reprinted your letter in the employee newsletter. And I just thought, this is so fascinating that encouragement, kind words, whatever it is, that encouragement stands out so much. It is so lacking in society. People are so not getting it that the simplest act of encouragement, a simple note that I sent, gets posted on a bulletin board. A simple letter that I sent gets reprinted. It's so unique and so stands out. Commit to being the biggest encourager in the room. Commit to being intentional with actually bringing the ministry of encouragement into people's lives. Speak life over them. Speak the word of the Lord over them. Speak courage into them. I would just say 2 quick things about that. One is this. If you will do that, it will come back to you. I believe so deeply in the ministry of sowing and reaping that if you want to be encouraged yourself, pour courage into others. What you sow, you will reap. But the Bible also talks about this issue of if you want friends, be friendly. And I think that I don't know of one person in my life who is a massive encouragement to me that I don't want to be around more. I think this would go, we talk about this sometimes in discipleship. If you want to disciple somebody, just start with encouragement. Encourage them, pray for them, give to them. Encourage them, pray to them. And we might talk about this in an episode one time, but encourage them, pray for them, give to them. And and the point that I make sometimes is this. Hey guys, listen. Do you know anybody who is super encouraging to you? Do you know anybody who's praying for you all the time? Do you know anybody who's just giving to you that you don't want to be around more? Of course. You want to be somebody that other people want to hang out with? You want to be somebody that other people want to be around? Be the biggest encourager in the room. Be the biggest encourager in the room. And I actually believe this. I actually felt like the Lord spoke to me one time and said, I am raising up the ministry of encouragement, and there are going to be people whose main ministry is that. I run into people sometimes when I'll have this conversation with them, and they'll realize, because we don't put enough emphasis on your main ministry is the ministry of encouragement. God is actually wanting to use your life to bring courage into others. God is wanting to bring your life where they have been discouraged, where they haven't known if they have what it takes, that you're to be Mordecai who comes alongside Esther. You're to be Moses who comes alongside Joshua. You're to be Barnabas that comes alongside Paul, and Paul that comes alongside Timothy. That Paul that says, listen, don't let anybody look down on you. You've got a gift of God in your life. That Moses would look at Joshua and say, you have what it takes to lead people into the promised land. Let's be Moses. Let's be Mordecai. Let's be Paul. Let's be the armor bearer, and let's be David. Let's be those people who are going to come and bring courage into others. If you do that, you will make a difference. You will make an impact. You will stand out, and you will reap what you sow.